This course is going to be awesome. I've been really excited for this, and the last 2 weeks of webinars have been very intensive, where it's been me doing a lot of talking. We've been going through, different concepts, digital sales, talking about having a tracking and follow-up system, implementing a CRM, weekly game plans to touch base with your customers and all that. And today is going to be totally different. So this is going to be a family dinner where basically I'm going to share my screen with some jumping off points. And the goal of this is to do a deep dive and help you guys figure out from the concepts that we've talked about the last couple days, what do we need to do to actually put this stuff in play in our business right now? And so the goal is going to be to build out business plans, to talk through chat functions on our website and everything else. And so where I want to go first, just to open this up as more people are coming into it, is I want to ask the question. Well, actually, first I'll back up real quick, and I want to thank National Chimney. So National Chimney obviously sponsored this, and we mentioned the last couple of weeks that I was going to be out here in person to do kind of a circuit, and it's actually worked out really well, I think, to do this remote because we've been able to document it. So now, Northeast HPBA is going to be able to have access to all this down the road. But I think also just the fact that we're in the middle of this disruption, it gives us a chance to think about our businesses a lot more than if we were just going through the normal flow of things. And so I want to say thank you to National Chimney for being generous enough to sponsor this opportunity. But as we get going here, I'd like to ask you guys, so I've got your screens up so I can see you. And for this call in particular, I would ask that you take yourselves off of mute. And this is just going to be an open conversation. So if you want to be part of the conversation, take yourself off of mute. And I would just like to roundtable here and talk about, number one, introduce yourself, your name, where you are, and then I'd like you to talk about what is it that you want to accomplish today. And we can just kind of go popcorn style, and I can call in anybody that hasn't been given an answer yet. So does anybody want to start out and introduce yourself and talk about what you're hoping to accomplish today?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So for those that can see my name on the screen, I'm Douglas Gibbons. I'm directly with Monty Electric Fireplace. I'm currently in my hometown, Burlington, Ontario, Canada. And I like what we did last week. We started to touch on it, and we've started to implement it with our company. And follow-up, I think, is the key. And I think you mentioned too last week, Tim, or somebody did an old saying years ago. I sold cars, and they said they either buy or they die. Well, that's a little harsh today, but meaning the deal dies. Like they either bought something else or they went out of business. So maybe we could touch a little bit more on that.
Yes, we definitely can. That's great. Thanks, Doug. Anybody else want to go next? I can call on someone if anyone is scared. Kim, I'm going to call on you. You're on my screen right there.
I hate being called on.
You have to volunteer then, Kim.
Yeah, actually, I was in like a webinar best practices last week, and they said never ever call out a grown adult on a call because that's the #1 way to kill engagement. And I was like, whoops. Well, we're doing that.
Okay, well, I'm Kim O'Brien. Our store is we're a retailer in Feistman's, New York, which is in the heart of the Catskill Mountains. What I want to accomplish today is just fun. I mean, a lot of what you covered last week, I had to duck out last week part-time, almost halfway through, but a lot of what you were covering are things that we already do. We're very small. My husband, myself, my son heads up our service and installation, and we have another fellow that works with him. So we're pretty small, so it's kind of easy for us to keep on top of things. Mm-hmm. But nowadays too, with everything going online and social media, and I'm lacking there. So I've gained a lot of information from you in that respect. But now it's also trying to, how do we deal with things with this whole COVID thing? I have both of my guys, my son and the other fellow, they're afraid to go in. They don't want to go into anybody's houses. So while we're doing, and we deal with a lot of second homeowners from New York. We're 2.5 hours from New York City. Mm-hmm. So trying to figure out what we can do, even virtually right now, so that we could get some business. Because, like I said, my guys, all we're doing now is we're lucky if we're doing one job a week, and that's if it's
Yeah.
in a vacant property.
Yeah.
Because again, we're so close to New York City, and they have all come up here. I
Yeah.
mean, you would not believe the influx of second homeowners. It's almost scary. So.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. I'm taking notes as we do this so we can kind of deal with all this systematically. That's awesome, Kim. Anybody else want to go?
I did put the chat button on my website. So that was
Awesome.
nobody's taken me up on it yet, but I did. I mean, that was one thing that I never ever would have even thought about doing had it not been for the webinar. So that was very helpful, and hopefully it's going to, work for us.
Cool. That's great. Anybody want to go next, or should I call on someone?
No, I'll go. I'm
Perfect.
Ian Menzies up in Vancouver, Canada. I really enjoyed last week's session and with the CRM, and like for me personally, I think it'll help me stay focused. Between emails and texts and phone calls, sometimes during the course of the day, you kind of lose your focus a little, or I lose my focus a little bit. And
Yeah.
I think that process will be really beneficial for myself.
Cool. Yeah, the CRM, it's been an absolute game changer for me personally, and it's just, it's something that it's really easy to implement. It just takes a little bit of discipline, and it's something that's really, really good. So that's awesome. All right, anybody want to go next?
I'll go here. My name is Brandon. I'm with Amonte and Candide, as well as Ian and Douglas, and I'm from Vancouver, Canada. I really enjoyed the CRM, and us as a team, we modified it to our kind of more sales side. So we've modified the job kind of bid or the job types to our kind of getting products into maybe certain areas of the sales system. So I'm excited to maybe implement that a little bit and to help me kind of stay organized as a new kind of person in this industry.
Cool. Perfect. That's awesome. It's good to see you, Brandon.
Thank you.
All right, let's go one more person. Anybody want to talk about what they want to accomplish today? All right, I'm going to do the round robin here. I'm going to call on somebody. Let's go with Liz. Liz, how are you doing?
I'm unmuting. All right, I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for doing this. I had a strange feeling you were going to call on me. We are in Colorado, and like everyone across the country, we're really looking for new ways to survive this whole COVID crisis, especially because our stay-at-home orders were just extended, and so it seems like there's really no end in sight. I have 100% buy-in with these methods, but the big thing I want to accomplish today is how can we demonstrate that there's going to be results for this that get the buy-in then of the rest of our team? We have 16 employees here, and I know at least a third of them are going to jump right on this because they're going to recognize immediately the ability to get results with this. But how do we kind of prove that to everyone else who may not want to do more paperwork but still wants to make commission sales? How do we kind of create that connection for them?
Amazing. That's really, really good. Yeah. And it seems like the pulse on this is that there's a lot of questions on the CRM, so we can absolutely dive into that, and we can just share best practices and talk through that. That's awesome. So me and Liz, we met at the trade show, and we connected over 90s pop punk music. We found out that we had some favorite bands. So thank you, Liz, for being here. All right, guys. Well, yeah, my pleasure. So let's kind of go into this. I have some topics lined up, and this will kind of go in order of, I'll be pretty close to the order of what you guys are talking about here. But the first thing that I want to go to is going to be the idea of the talk.to-chat. So basically, this is something that if you would have asked me, honestly, even like 3 months ago or 4 months ago, and said, do you think it's a good idea to have chat on your website? I would have said, of course it's a great idea, but I don't have time for it. My team's too busy. They're not going to stop what they're doing and, talk to these random people on our website. So it was one of those things that even though I knew what the right behavior was, we didn't actually execute on it. And all of a sudden, the COVID-19 crisis hits and everybody's thrown for a loop. We're scrambling for any kind of business we can get. And all of a sudden, chat becomes super important. And I think that with chat, like, Kim, you mentioned that you haven't had any traction on it yet. And I think that the success of that is going to depend on a few things. So obviously, like, the chat's only going to be as successful as people are going to your website, right? So depending on seasonally where you are right now, depending on the size of your store, how you do digital advertising, you may or may not get much traffic to your website. What we do know is that your website is the front door for your business. And so if it wasn't already the case before the crisis, definitely in the midst of the crisis, everyone's going to go to your website before they come into your physical store. And so the reason I think chat's important conceptually is, even if there hasn't been a lot of traction on it yet, it's one of those things that it costs $0 to do. And it's part of patching the hole in the website. And I've got a different course that I teach that's called, reasons that websites leak money. And one of the things that we talk about in that is that most websites in our industry tend to leak dollars because customers go to the website, and very often there's not an easy way for them to engage with the business. The website might have directions, it might have a phone number, it might have a button that says, contact us. But from a consumer's perspective, there's no way for them to know what's going to work in their space. There's no way for them to understand how much it's going to cost. And even though there's a contact us button, the phraseology of that button doesn't directly solve a consumer's problem. And so they kind of meander around the site confused, and they hit the back button. So what I think is really important to do during this time is to find ways to patch the hole in your website. Because I give the analogy, like, if you're going fishing, the marketing dollars that you spend, that's like the bait. And you could have the best bait in the world and get tons of fish that are going to your website. And marketing people will brag about, well, we have this many impressions, we have this many people going to our website. And I look at that and I say, I don't care. I want to know how many leads you got out of it, because it doesn't matter how many fish are going into the net, it's how many stay in the net. And so if the leads, if you get whatever, 5,000 hits a month to your website, but you've got 3 people that have actually hit that contact us button and submitted their email address, that tells us that, like, it doesn't matter how many people are going to the site, your retention of those customers is really bad, and your net has a giant hole in it, and the fish are leaking through, even though they were in the net at one point. So I think that it's really important to systematically go through low-cost ways to start patching those holes, to where if someone is on your website, it gives them the absolute best chance possible to engage with your business and become a lead. And I think chat's one of those things. So it's not a guarantee that it's going to work, but we've found here in the Pacific Northwest that through making a series of questions and even a script with the chat, it's something that we've actually seen a lot of equity with. And I mean, the websites that I manage out here in the Pacific Northwest get a pretty decent amount of traffic, but we're, sometimes pushing 10 to 20 customers a day that we're engaging with via chat, and starting to move into the point where we can get contact information and follow up with them. So I think that, Kim, it's amazing that you already moved on that. And it's totally understandable, if you're a little bit smaller dealership where there's just a few of you guys and things are obviously crazy right now in the crisis, I can totally understand how that would be quiet. But I think building the practice in of having that available and making it a part of a team member's role and responsibility to be monitoring the chat function, to have a series of questions that they can be asking a customer, I think that that's going to show just a tremendous amount of humanity to your customers. And I think that that can engage them and draw them into the sales funnel, when before they may have hit that back button. I'll open it up here in just one second, but kind of on the same note, we talked a little bit earlier in this series about how when customers go to your website, there's really 2 primary questions that they have. Does anybody remember what question number 1 was when a customer goes on your website or into your showroom?
Fulfill my need, and how much does it cost?
Yeah, Joel hit it on the head, right? What's going to work in my space and how much is it going to cost? And it's the same way if we're going to buy any type of consumer good, right? If we're going to buy a car or a dishwasher or a camera, whatever it is, we want to understand, I've got a problem, I've got a situation, and number 1, I just need to know what options are going to work in it, right? Like, don't show me a car that's not right for the situation that I have. Don't give me a dishwasher that's too big for the space I have available, whatever the example is. That's question number 1. And everyone that's coming to our website has some type of a space that they live in or that they own. And number 1, they want to know what's going to work in it. Before we go to question 2, I would ask the question on our websites. We're being really honest. Is there any way on our websites for a customer to actually get that question answered? and I'll point the blame at manufacturers here because there's not many manufacturers on this call. I won't get in trouble from retailers. But if you look at a manufacturer's website, is there any way for a consumer to know? Like, do they know what a zero clearance fireplace is? No. Do they know what an insert is? No. Do they know what a gas log is? So they see cool pictures of fireplaces, but they actually don't know what's going to work in my space when they're on that website. That's not to pick on manufacturers, because there are some websites that do a really nice job, and there's plenty of really smart people in manufacturers. But the problem we run into is the curse of knowledge, where because we understand the difference of these pieces of terminology, we sometimes make assumptions on what the consumer knows, as opposed to maybe simplifying it just a little bit more and speaking at their level. So question number one is that. Question number two, how much is it going to cost? This is super tricky because there's all kinds of variables, right? I mean, there's a million variables. Is it one story? Is it two story? Is it wood burning? Is it gas? Is it pellet? Does it need gasoline? Does it need framing? So I'm not saying that these questions are simple, because there's a lot of difficulty there. But what I am saying is that they are the questions the consumer has. And so if the website that you have doesn't answer those questions, if it doesn't easily identify what's going to work in a customer's space, and if it doesn't have a way for them to actually understand at least a ballpark of what the product costs, the chat function becomes super important, because you can start to engage that customer person to person, and you can ask them a series of questions to actually identify that. And then you can point them to a part of your website or to a brochure that might have been confusing before, but now that you've talked with them a little bit via chat and they actually understand, oh, a gas insert, this is going to be the right thing for me. Now, all of a sudden, boom, that question's answered. They're more engaged with your company, and they're more willing to go down the path. Does that make sense with the kind of the way that chat plays into patching the holes on your site?
It gives them the opportunity to ask the questions that they can't find the answers to. So just another way to engage.
You're totally right, Joel. And so this is where I'd want to start. So what I'd like to do, because I think it's super important that we build a chat script, because I think that the danger is having chat up there. And I know for me, if I'm busy, chat's going to come in at random times. I can't control it. And so I think it's really important to give team members a script. And the way that I would think about this is, I would think about if the customer was in your showroom, or if they called you on the phone, what would be the questions that you asked them to get just an understanding of what they have and what could potentially work. And I'd love to just build that script right now and just roundtable it. Let's just start talking through questions of what should we be asking a customer to move them into finding out what's going to work inside their space. So I'll take some notes here, and I'll send this out afterwards to the group so I can document all of this. But if we're starting out here, like, what would be how should we start the chat out? What should be the first thing that we say to this customer?
I like to use the idea, instead of always hitting them up for price range, also ask them, what is your time frame? Because if they're doing it right away, you've got a really hot prospect. But if they say, oh, we're thinking about 6 months, I mean, they could go to 10 different stores, 12 different manufacturers. So just get an idea of how relevant is this project? Where is it? And are they just starting out, or are they already in the framing stage?
That's amazing. I heard three things there that are really good. What is your time frame? That's a great question, and that absolutely tells you the sense of urgency. Where is it? That makes a ton of sense. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but in my retail stores, we'd have people come in sometimes where, if you didn't ask them right away, you'd find out 45 minutes in the conversation that they live 4 hours away and they're just here shopping around because this is, they just happen to be in town visiting a friend. So that's really good. And the last question, what stage, like if it's a new construction or a remodel job, what stage is the job at? It's a really good one. One other question. So let's think about this. So if we want to connect with a customer, imagine customers on our website and the chat window pops up and you're interacting with them for the first time in the midst of this crisis, what would be something to say to get the customer on your side and get them engaged with you? How do you think you could introduce yourself in a way that really compels them, makes you feel like you're a human, and that you want to go down the path together?
Typically, they probably asked a specific question. They're on chat. So it's referring back to, thanks for coming on our website. That's a really good question. And then kind of answer what the question is.
Yeah, absolutely. If they ask you a question, for sure. I guess I'm thinking, if let's say that they've been on your site for 10, 15 seconds and you're going to proactively engage them, and you don't want to, cause the wrong vibe, but you really want them to connect with you. What would be an engaging way to introduce yourself to a customer? So let's imagine this. Let's imagine that. Oh, sorry, go for it, Doug.
Yeah, I didn't click on mute at the right time. Just ask them how they're doing. How you doing today? What's going on in your neighborhood or something? It's sort of just an open, generic, friendly question.
Is there anything?
Throw in the smiley face.
Oh, I use smiley faces all the time in emails and texts and I mean all the time, because stuff is so, like, anytime you text or type anything, it is so cold and static and stale. I would overemphasize emotions all the time. So let's think about this. So in the midst of this crisis, is there anything we could say to the customer that would instantly connect us with them, human to human, where we feel a connection that, 2 months ago, if we introduced ourselves that way, we may not quite have had that same connection?
Asking them how they're doing,
Safe and well.
entire situation. Like, how are you? How is your family? How are your employees? Or not employees, but how's your mental health?
Yep. Yeah, that's really, really good. And Ron just said something here in the chat that I think is just terrific. So in the chat, Ron just said, "Hi, I'm Ron, an actual live person, and would be happy to answer any questions that you have." That's really, really good. One thing that I think about very similar to that I would do is I would think about making the initial interaction with the customer just a quick sentence or two about the situation that you and the customer are in and where your business is. So I might just say something like, "Hey, my name's Tim. I'm a real person working from home in the midst of this crisis, and I'd love to answer any questions that you have." Something like that. Or just like Ron said, is there anything that you're wondering that I can help you with? But I think it's really important to say, "Hi, I'm a real person, Tim, working from home during this crisis." And the reason I say that is that, sales is all about building connections and building bridges, right? Like if a customer tells you that they have a dog and you love dogs, like, what should you do? Say, "Oh, I love dogs," right? Like, don't just let that comment pass by. Like, you want to build a bridge everywhere that you can. You don't want to be deceitful about it, but like, if there's a connection, you push into that connection. So if you say, "Hey, I'm a real person," are people right now craving interaction with real people? And you say, "Hey, I'm working from home," or chances are they working from home in the midst of this crisis? Are they in this crisis? Like, those are 3 connection points that will start to get, goodwill. Like, imagine if you're on any type of website, if you're looking to buy something, or if you have questions about something, and all of a sudden the chat pops up, "Hey, I'm a real person. My name's Tim. I'm working from home in the midst of this crisis. I'd love to answer any questions that you have," as you look around. You're probably going to get a response on that compared to maybe a month and a half ago if you just said, "How are you doing today? Let us know if you have any questions." That's not totally bad, but there's no human to human connection there. So I would anchor really hard on those 3 things. I'd anchor hard on, I'm a real person, give them your name. I'm working from home in the middle of the crisis. Is there anything that I can help you with? Or I hope you and your family are safe. Is there anything that I can help you with? I think that that's a really good way to engage people via chat. So from there, let's just roundtable this. If you had this customer in your showroom, you connected with them that way, and the customer replies and says, "Well, I've been looking at fireplaces for my house." Let's write down some questions. What would be a series of questions that we could start asking about? We've got Doug's. What's the time frame of your project? Where is it? What's the stage of the job? If it's a remodel or new construction. What would be some questions that we could ask to really get an idea of what's going to work in this customer space?
You gotta find that anchored price too, right? Somehow.
Definitely. I think that the anchor price probably comes at the tail end of these questions, right? Because coming into this, we don't know what the customer has, and they probably don't have a huge idea of what fireplaces cost. So we probably want to throw out some ideas to, you know, the example I give is like, you got a block of marble. It's like a big square block. You're trying to ask questions to shave it down and shave it down and shave it down until you've got, you know, the statue of David there. And so I think that before we get to the statue of David, we got to do a little bit of shaving on the marble. So what kinds of questions could we ask to get to the point where we have a pretty good idea of what's going to work in the customer space?
Well, we need to know what fuel they're looking for. I mean, are they going for wood? Are they going for gas?
Yeah. Yeah. What were you hoping to burn?
I always ask if they have something existing there, because I find that customers always get confused with an insert or a fireplace. So they always think everything's an insert. So I say, oh, so you have an existing wood burning box now. Well, no, what do you mean? So I think that's typically when I work for Napoleon, when I'm on a floor helping customers, that's one of the first questions I ask.
They also sometimes confuse a fireplace, a freestanding stove with a fireplace. Sometimes they call a freestanding stove a fireplace, in my experience as well. So
yeah.
first,
everything's a fireplace and everything's a mantle, right? Yeah, those are amazing. And Tina, so you saying, what do you have there now? That's so good. So one thing that we've done is we've changed our language to we always start there. You know, what do you want to burn and what do you have there now? Because again, it goes back to the fact that every consumer that we're talking to has some kind of a situation that they're in. And so it's really, really important for us to identify what they have, because obviously options are going to be limited to what's going to work inside of that space. And so starting with that, you know, what do you have now is super important. And I would even give them categories. It's like some categories that we use. We say, do you have a blank wall? Do you have an open fireplace? And we'll say open as in like you could reach in and load the wood in yourself. Instead of zero clearance, we use the terminology sealed fireplace. So we'll say, do you have a sealed fireplace? Like you can't reach in and touch those logs if you wanted to. It's like sealed up with a fixed glass or a fixed screen on the front. We found good luck with that. Maybe you have a different term that works well, but as you know, sometimes we'll say, you know, you could have a built-in fireplace that's sealed off, like it was framed in with the house, and usually it's sealed off with a glass and a screen. We like that terminology, sealed, a lot. We'll say, do you have a new construction project? Are you working on an addition or a remodel? Or do you happen to have a freestanding stove? And it would even be a good idea if you wanted to make up like a graphic that's got these like 5 or 6 situations on it, and just paste that into the chat and say, hey, there's a few common situations. Which one of these do you have? And we'd love to show you the fireplaces that'll work. That's really good on situation. So let's say that we know what they want to burn, and let's say that we understand they've got well, let's go down the path for this. So let's say that they've got an open fireplace. What would be another question to be really important to understand what could be a good fit?
I always ask, what are you trying to accomplish? Meaning,
that's amazing.
Heater-rated, non-heater rated, you know, because sometimes even an open fireplace, they may just want, you know, you'll get, oh, well, I, you know, have Christmas or Thanksgiving. Maybe they're just looking for a log set and a door change or something, you know. So I asked, that's one of my first 5 questions, I would say.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. You know, what do you want this to do for you? And sometimes, you know, whenever I'm asking these questions, sometimes people don't know the answer. So you got to prompt them a little bit and be like, are you looking for some warmth? Are you looking for safety as a backup source of heat? But a lot of the time people really know the answers to these. That's really good. I mean, so if we know what they want to burn, we understand what they have there now, say it's an open fireplace. You know, one thing I'll do, I always ask for dimensions, but I don't actually care if they have them or not. So if they have dimensions, amazing. That jumps us ahead a few steps. But if the customer doesn't have dimensions, I don't really care, and I don't lose sleep over it. And the reason why is that, you know, most fireplaces come in a bunch of sizes, and I know between all the manufacturers that are out there, we can find something that fits. I mean, one way or another, we'll find something that fits. And so if the customer says that they don't have dimensions, I'll jump in and say, well, you know, no problem. Based on some standard dimensions, here's what will work for you. Now, we'd love to set up a video call where we can actually help you measure your fireplace and we can fine tune this. But, you know, based on where most fireplaces are, here's the options that would tend to work. That's the way that I tend to think. And sometimes people get nervous about that. They're like, well, but what happens if they've got this weird, you know, 17-inch wide fireplace? And my thing is like, well, 90% of fireplaces in the world aren't 17 inches. And I would rather interact with more customers deeper down the funnel than lose out on opportunities because I make the gate of entry too high for customers to get to. So I would, especially when you're in a chat function like this, don't push them for too much information, like with basic questions. You know, is it a 1-story house? Is it a 2-story house? I love to ask, is this project on an inside wall or an outside wall? It's one of my favorite questions, because you guys all know this, right? Like, if the customer happens to have a crawl space below, you want to ask what's below this. Is there a crawl space? Do you have a slab? Is it a finished basement? Is it an unfinished basement? If I know that a customer's got, say, an open fireplace on an outside wall of the house and they have a crawl space, that tells me gas line's going to be easy. We're going to find a way to get it there, right? Like, chances are we can run it through the crawl space. Worst case scenario, it's on the outside of the house. So we can find a way to get it around to that. If they tell me that it's on an inside wall and the house is on a slab, there's a lot more complexity. That tells me this is going to be a more difficult job. So I think that there's some basic questions there. And I would spend time on this, right? Like, what do you want to burn? How do you want to use the space? What room is this located in? Do you have gas inside the fireplace right now? Is your roof really steep to walk on? If you're putting up Christmas lights, can you walk on your roof? These are all things that are really important. And I think that if we find out, like, I'm just going through the list of questions that we wrote up here, right? Like, if we know what their time frame is, what they want to burn, we understand what they have in the space now, we know that what they want the fireplace to do for them, we understand where in the home it's located. I mean, that gives us enough information, right, to throw out a ballpark number. Doesn't that, like even like within $1,000, like, is that fair? If we know that they want to burn wood, that they've got an old stove they're replacing from 1985, we know that they've got a 2-story home, and there's another living space up above this with a chase that the pipe goes through. We can get within $1,000 of that. So that's when we can start to throw out those anchor points. To Ron's point, once we've got that information, now we can start to say, okay, perfect. Here's an option of a wood stove that a lot of customers have been really happy with. Here's another option that's a little more cost effective. We'd see that most often people are going to spend whatever it is, $6,000 to $8,000 for the fireplace, the vent pipe, and the installation for this more expensive model. But we also have some alternatives that are going to be less depending on the features that you want. That's how you start to get to that anchor point. But if you throw that price out too early, so like, here's what happens sometimes with chat is team members, they don't buy in. Liz is talking about this idea of getting buy-in. And what happens very often is if a team member doesn't buy in, if they're just complying, sure, they'll chat, but they'll just say, hi, my name's Tim. Let me know if I can answer any questions for you. But that's not engaging the customer. They're not drawing anything out of them. And then the customer writes in and says, hey, I'm looking for a gas insert and some gas line. And I've seen this before. A team member replies back and says, oh, well, yeah, our gas inserts tend to cost $5,000 to $6,000, and we run limited amounts of gas line depending on the time of year, and we really need to go out to the house and take a look at it first. So let us know if you'd like us to do that. And that's just like, that's way too much for the customer, right? It's way too early to throw out that price tag, number one, because like no questions have been asked. Number two, there's been no trust and rapport established. So if you just throw out a price, it becomes a commodity purchase to the customer. And what we want to do instead, and the team members technically complying, yes, they are quote unquote engaging the customer via chat, but they're not doing this as if it was like a true relationship they were trying to nurture. It'd be like if on the phone a customer calls your store and says, hey, I think I'm looking at a gas insert. Oh, well, our gas inserts cost $5,000 to $6,000. And yeah, I mean, we run gas line, but it's, only certain times of the year. Okay, thank you for your time. Bye. Like, that doesn't help the customer. You gotta jump in and you gotta nurture this thing out, right? Like, awesome. Yeah, we have gas inserts that help a lot of people. I'd love to back up a little bit and learn about your space. So I could recommend some options that could be a good fit for you. Would you mind telling me about what you have there right now, right? Slow is fast. Don't go fast on chat. You want to have these questions scripted out because you want to be able to just paste these in as needed. But it's really important that you nurture this. It's not just an instantaneous, like, wham bam thing. This is something that we really have to nurture out. Any comments on that?
Information? Yeah, once you get all that information, do you give them a best, better, good pricing, or you just give them one shot?
So if it's via chat or via the phone, I don't use the terminology best, better, good. If it's in the showroom, I absolutely do. But if it's over the phone or via chat, where I will usually just tend to anchor them on the high side of what I think is best for them. So, say you've got 3 models in mind for a customer, I'll pick the one that I truly think is best, and I'll try to anchor a little bit high. and I'll probably try to say like, hey, well, based on everything you're saying, this is an option that a lot of customers have really liked. And I'll throw out a price range out there, and I'll just wait to see what they say. If they, depending on the response, that's where I might say, we actually have some other options too that are a little bit less expensive. If I was in the showroom, I might physically say like best, better, good, but via chat, I don't. I'll usually, but yeah, so I'll anchor with one up high. And one thing that we found, this is really important, and this is where the best, better, good play comes in. Like it's so good to have a best, better, good in your showroom. But what we found is if you throw out just one price, like go back to that example of the team member I witnessed, just being super quick. Gas sensors cost this much, and yeah, we run gas line, all that stuff. What that does for that customer, it kind of backs them up into fight or flight mode. The response has been overwhelming. It's been super quick. It's pretty clear that like the customer's overwhelmed, and their answer is yes or no. Do I buy or not buy? When you can be more engaging with a customer, give them a range, and respond, in kind with, yes, if that's too much, we have options that are less, and you can even start to throw out 2 or 3 or 4 anchor points. The question in the customer's mind moves from, am I going to buy or not, to which option am I going to buy? So one thing that's super important and this is where the beauty of best, better, good comes from is it's proven sales that if you give customer one price, the question is, do I buy or not? When you get 3 prices, like 3 is the magic number. When you can get to 3, the question is, which option do I want to buy, right? So like if you go to the movie theater and you see popcorn is $12, you're like, what, $12 for popcorn? Like, am I desperate enough to buy it because I'm here and I have to, or am I just going to pass, right? But if you see 3 popcorns and one is, $9.50, one is $12, and one's $15, you start to think about which one do I want to buy. Another thing you can do too with your pricing, this is kind of outside this conversation, but another thing you can do with your pricing is the movie theater thing, right? So like if I've got a small popcorn for $6.50, I've got a medium popcorn for $8.50, and I've got a large popcorn for $12.50, which one am I going to sell based on that model?
Middle one.
Middle one, right? Yeah, it's only $2 more. It gives me, maybe the medium's twice the size of the small. So you can use this interplay between these prices to lead customers to what you think is right. Like we do that all the time. It's not manipulative a bit, right? If the most expensive one is best for the customer, and you make it to where the most expensive one is just a little bit more than the medium one, like the customer sees the value. Like I'm going to spend, 3/4 the money and get half the features. Like I'm just gonna spend a couple $100 more and get everything that I want. So we'll move on from chat, but what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna compile all this. So we have a list of really good questions here. What's your time frame? Where is it? Stage of the job? I'm a real person. I'm gonna compile all of this, and I'm gonna actually turn it into like a form that I'll send out to the group afterwards. And I would recommend, take what I'm gonna give you and modify it for your company. But I would create a document that you give to your people that they can use. Does that sound good? Okay, awesome. So let's go here next. I was going to go to virtual in-home sales, but I'm gonna move on to the CRM. So a lot of you guys had questions and comments about using and implementing the CRM, and I'd like to open that up right now. And let's talk in detail about how we can start using this, how we can get buy-in from our team members. And where do you guys want to start with the CRM about really implementing this in your business?
I'd say getting the guys just to do it. How do you get them to do it? Is make it a mandatory thing for your commission? This has to be an entry in CRM, or I'm sorry, I don't know what the answer would be, but we have a hard time implementing some of the CRM on our end. I'm from National, by the way. So me doing customer relations, I dig into CRM every single time. I want to see any interactions that happen with that customer, with any of our staff at all before I contact customer. And when they're not putting in the notes, I sometimes will walk into a fire. So yep. It's, we're getting it more and more because we're realizing that notes that are put in there are helping the sales guys too, for sure. But yeah, how do you get them to?
Yeah, that's an awesome question, Ron. And I think that I think it has to start with expectations. So I think that for sales, I guess give the example of myself, right? So for my first 7 years in the industry, I didn't have a follow-up system. I didn't understand the value of a lead. And a big part of it was that it had never been explained to me. I'd never actually had sales explained to me. I was just told, hey, Tim, you're good with people and you know a lot about fireplaces because you installed. So just go out and start selling. That was my MO. And that's how a lot of people are in our industry, right? You're good with people. You like to talk, like, hey, just go talk to people and just start selling products. So I developed a ton of bad habits because that was what I thought my job was. And that's actually not what sales is, right? Like that's about 20% of sales. 80% of sales is making phone calls to follow up, answering emails, updating a CRM, understanding where in the pipeline the customer is, and being meticulous on your paperwork. Like my understanding was that 100% of my role was really the 20% of the job, which is being on the sales floor and talking face to face with customers. So I think that I was set up with the wrong expectations of what sales is. Part of it too for me is that for the beginning of my time in the industry, I was paid a flat rate regardless of how much I sold. And for any retailers on here, I would highly, highly advise moving your team members to a incentive-based pay program. And I'd be happy to talk with you offline about that. I've got a few different comp structures that have been just really, really good models. We can even talk about that on here if you want to, but I would move anyone that's in a sales role to some kind of incentive-based pay, where as they sell more, they make more. And for me, that was transformational when I moved into a job where I was paid based on the performance. And ultimately, before when I had this job where I was paid a flat rate, I was brainwashed into thinking that's the right thing. You get to tell customers, I'm not paid on a commission. I'm just here to help you. And honestly, like, even though that sounds good, what actually came of that is it meant I was lazy. I had no incentive to help them. I had no incentive. Like, if they were bothering me, like, I didn't need to push through. My pay didn't change. I wasn't going to follow up with them. Like, it hurt me, it hurt my company, and it hurt my customers. Now, for me, like, none of that was ill will. And I would actually argue, like, I was not intentionally lazy, but it was a byproduct of the way I was paid, right? Like, people will do the behavior that you incentivize. If your comp structure incentivizes laziness and apathy, that's what you're going to get. If your comp structure incentivizes, attention to detail, customer service, and moving the needle towards selling, like, that's what's going to happen. The danger, sometimes people get really worried about, well, if I pay on a commission, I got to worry about my team, manipulating customers or trying to slam things in that are the wrong fit. I mean, it's kind of true, but that's also kind of like not getting married because you're worried that, like, someday your spouse might turn into a different person and they might, cheat on you. And it's like, well, it's always a possibility, but like, at some point you just got to get married and like make the best of it. And also, is a great analogy is like, if you get married, like, what makes a marriage work? Investing in it, like, day after day and week after week. What makes a sales team work? Investing in it day after day and week after week. And it's amazing how with regular meetings and coaching, and I can just tell you guys, I've never ever had an issue with a team member slamming products. It just has never happened. And that's even with team members that are on full straight commission. So I think that the way that a team member is paid absolutely plays into it. But I think a lot of it too is goes back to expectations. And so a really good place to start with the CRM is framing the expectations. And I always think about this for me, like, if I'm leading people at all, like, blame goes up and praise goes down. So when I rolled this out for my team, it started out with an apology of me just saying, hey guys, you've been salespeople for a while. We've been trying to move the needle forward. And I just realized, like, I haven't given you all the tools that you need to succeed, right? Like, we run into these issues sometimes where customers, they get upset at us because we haven't called them back on time. Our bids haven't gone out in the time frame that we've promised. And I'm looking at sales numbers and, like, you guys could be making a lot more money. And in a lot of ways, it's my fault. I haven't given you the tools to do this. So in light of that, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving towards a spreadsheet where we're actually going to start tracking our opportunities, and we're going to start thinking about what stage of the journey customers are at. And we're going to be putting notes in the system so that us and other team members understand what's been discussed with customers and where the situation's at. And I would blame yourself. I would blame yourself and say, we're going to give you this. I would recommend easing into it. So like what I did is I told the team what I'm going to do as the leader is now, and we were using a CRM spreadsheet. We weren't paying for big expensive software, but I said, what I'm going to do for you is I'm personally going to go through your last 2 years worth of opportunities, and I'm going to load every single one into the CRM for you. And that way, you know everything that's in front of you. That's what I did. I didn't make them do the legwork of digging back through files and records. And, I didn't do that. Salespeople hate paperwork that's unnecessary. And so as the leader, I told them that I would do it. And they saw me at my desk, like putting this in. And eventually they're like, hey, do you got my list ready? Like they were starting to get excited about this. So that's something that was really effective for me. Once we had everything implemented into it, the last 24 months worth of opportunities, then we had to carve out what were the expectations for that. And again, for a team member that's paid based on an incentive, and I'd recommend, if you're building some kind of a commission structure for a salesperson, I'd recommend that at least 30% of their pay is incentive based, at least. And there's, again, I can help you with that. We can talk about it now if you want to, but that's enough where like they got enough skin in the game where this is an incentive to them. And I would just set the expectation of, hey, this is the way that we're going to work our CRMs. I'm going to give you an hour on Tuesdays and Thursdays where you don't have showroom responsibilities. You can go into this separate space. And the expectation is that you just start following up with your customers this way. You're painting lines on the basketball court. Here's the expectation. I'm going to give you the tools to do it, right? I'm going to give you, if they're an installer, right? You give your installers tools. You give your installers set hours to do their job. Do the same thing for your salespeople, right? Here's your tools. Here's the set hours to do this. And just check back in with them on how it's going, on what they're finding with it. And this is going to be a slow process. If you haven't used a sales management system like this, it's going to take you 2-3 months to start building the habit. But the big thing is, don't give up on it. Even if the team starts to push back and complain about it, you just got to speak with data, and you just got to think about, well, if you're incentivized to sell more and your job is sales, calling customers back and understanding where they're at in the funnel, like that's a 1 + 1 = 2. And you can give data if you want. Like, I mean, I've seen people, I think I talked about this a couple webinars ago, but like I had a team member a number of years ago. This guy started out at like 22, 23 years old. Year 1 in sales, he did 350,000. Year 2, he jumped to over 700. Year 3, 850. Year 4, he's over $1 million. 24-year-old kid, no college education, in a retail showroom. And that was a showroom where we spent less than $24,000 a year on our entire marketing budget. I mean, there's a lot of things stacked against him, but he was able to move the needle this way just with the organization and attention to detail. So you don't want to blow smoke, but you want to just be real with them and say, hey, you sold this much last year without having a follow-up system. Like, I think we could really, really help you with this. How do you think that would go over with your team members, to have kind of an intentional system of expectations like that?
At National, it's already been implemented, so it's going to be a taskmaster to try to get them to do it. So customer service, I mean, then when they're having an interaction with a customer that there's any issue at all and it doesn't get noted in there, the next time the sales guy rolls in there, he's walking into a bee's hive.
Yep.
So we're just trying to, I don't know. And you're right. Sales guys are the worst at putting the notes in. And it's unfortunate because they really could help them. I see. The king of follow-up and the customers that I deal with on this end, even with the Northeast sales guy that I work more directly with. And I get more sales out of that just by caring. Hey, I dropped that drop shot. I just wanted to check, make sure everything got in there all right. Oh yeah, it came in perfect. Thank you so much. Oh, by the way, I need these 2 of the cash. Can I send you that? That happens every day, every single day. Follow-up is so.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Ron. And I'll tell you guys, this is a funny story for me. I don't think I told this last week. I've been doing a lot of webinars lately, so I apologize if I did. But last week, there was an opportunity that I was working on, and follow-up is a huge part of it, right? So because I had documented it in my CRM, I knew that this was the day I was supposed to follow up based on our conversation from the last couple of weeks. I had context to where we left it off. And, when you follow up, you never want to just check in and say like, hey, I was just checking in, and I hope things. Were you thinking about the job? If you wanted to do, you're stumbling all over yourself. You want to go in knowing what to ask for. And so what I did is I followed up with a value piece for this customer. I thought about the situation they were in. I thought about something that would give them immense value, and at the same time, I was going to check back in on the sale. So I just circled back via email. And I said, hey, I know you wanted to me to follow up with you on this date, so I'm checking in. I was thinking about your business, and I found something for you that I think would be tremendously valuable. This is totally free. I'm not selling him anything. I let him know what that piece of value was. And then at the bottom of it, I said, I just want to check back in to see if you wanted to move forward with our business deal. I got a text message back literally within 2 minutes saying, thank you so much for sending that. Yes, I want to move ahead with it, right? So I followed up when I said I would follow up. I tried to give him value. So even if he said no to me on this proposition, I was giving him something of value that he could take and implement right away with his business. And then lastly, I was checking in to ask for the money, and it worked out really well. So I think that there are ways we can show that a system like this works, but you're right, Ron, like there's got to be buy-in. Like if you've got a team of people, it's way easier to teach new good habits than to undo bad habits. And if you have a team of people that's not disciplined, over time, they may not be the right person in that role, but chances are there's someone on your team that is hungry enough that will start to use this. And I would create a public scoreboard of follow-ups and of these opportunities to prove to the tenured salespeople that they're actually going to start to lose to other people who are newer, who don't have the same experience, that are actually using this system. What else do you guys think about implementing this? What are going to be the struggles in your business?
I think this is Tina again with Napoleon. So we use Salesforce, and it's a never-ending challenge to always figure it out, because we have a lot of different departments that put stuff in, and if things aren't just right, it can be challenging. So I always find I have adopted it just because it does help me be accountable and stay organized, because I love how it tells explains how you follow up and things like that. But I think as trying to get people to buy in, and I see this more on our corporate level, not so much on the smaller retail, is salespeople love competition. So you can always do, as a retailer, whoever does the most entries, or whoever closes the most sales because of the entries, little things like that, do a spiff program with them, or something, because in sales we love competition. So I always found I know with me, when I'm always driven to win. So if there's something like that, it's an easier buy-in versus always demanding, or, saying, well, you're not going to get your commission because you don't use it, or something like that. Make it more of a positive, but then also as the manager or the owner, show them, like you just said, how they're winning or how they get the sale because of using this process. So that's just a thought.
Yeah, that's really good, Tina. Does that resonate with anybody else?
Yeah, we use Salesforce, and it's kind of a standard practice. I mean, it's part of our culture. Everything that we do at every department in the company, it's entered into Salesforce, so we all kind of know what each other are doing. So there's no surprises. One of the themes is treat it like if you're not there and somebody needs to find out information about your customer or what's going on, they'll know just by looking in Salesforce. So it's just kind of a way we do everything.
And this is a best practice to just be thinking about in general, to piggyback on what Joel's saying, is Simon Sinek calls it the school bus test. So if I got hit by a school bus today, would my business still be able to function without me? If you're a salesperson and you got hit by a school bus, could a team member pick it up right where you left it off and take it, right? If this was buried in a time capsule and 2 years later the customer wanted to go ahead with the job, have we documented everything? And this is like one of those things, salespeople very often operate on a fast is slow principle, where they're, oh yeah, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to sit in front of my CRM. I don't have time to update the notes. But then they get caught on the back end when they forget about a detail, or there was they put the wrong item on the retail order because they weren't paying attention, right? And it takes them 5 times as long on the back end to undo the mistakes as if they would have just documented it right on the front end. So this is where discipline comes in. Like, we got to talk with salespeople about, it really is important to have a system of discipline for this, because it's going to serve customers. It's going to help you long term, and it's a time machine. Like, you're literally buying yourself time back to make more money and to serve more customers, and that's super, super important. I found a couple things. So I found that, and to be honest, with the CRM, the hardest people to get to adopt it are the folks who have 15, 20 years experience in the industry that have never had any system of organization. Those are the hardest. And frankly, they're the wrong people for the job. God bless them that they've got experience. Go use it somewhere else, because because if you want them to actually be a salesperson, like there has to be a level of discipline with it. There has to be some organization to it. And it doesn't mean that you have to fire them right away. I guess it's probably too harsh when I say go be a salesperson somewhere else, but that's not where you want to invest. Like where you want to invest is in a holistic person that understands what discipline is, that actually has a heart for customers. Like if you have a salesperson that doesn't believe in follow-up, they don't believe in documenting their opportunities, it actually means they don't care about their customers. It really does. The salesperson that will actually document, hey, this is the interaction that I had. Mrs. Smith mentioned that she's really nervous about the installation because she had a house burned down previously from a house fire. Be careful about that when you're going in for the install. That's the salesperson that cares about their customers, and we just got to be really upfront with that. So I think when it comes to the CRM, circling back big picture, the way that you make it work is you set the expectation. Number one, you have to set the expectation. And I would think about for you, like, what does that look like? What am I going to say to my sales team to say, this is what we expect? I know we haven't done this before, but this is the CRM system that we're going to go to so that you can make more money, so that you can serve more customers, so that you can have less stress in your life. What are you going to do to set that expectation? But to follow up on it, you have to have a system of regular sales meetings. And I would ask, is there anybody on this call? You can just raise your hand. I can see your cameras here. Does anybody on this call, do they run, or are they a part of a regular series of sales meetings that happen at least twice a month? Okay. So that means that there's some equity there we can go to.
I'll just say that our team, the sales team itself, has a weekly meeting. And I was on there when I was on the road. I'd probably be beneficial if I was participating, at least in the listening at that meeting, to hear some of the stuff going on, because I'm supporting these guys out in the field in my role, and I'm not, unfortunately. I'm going to probably suggest that I get on that call just to be in line with these guys, but yeah, we do.
Yeah. So Ron and Tina gave us the thumbs up. That's amazing. And I would say for salespeople, one of the best things you can do right away is I would implement a sales meeting, and I would go at least every other week. If you can do a weekly meeting, absolutely do it. And it's okay, even if your company's small and this meeting is 2 people, amazing. Like that's totally okay. Salespeople need motivation and they need focus. It's really, really important that they have that. You know, for me, like when I was in a sales role, I'd get excited for a while, then I would get into a rut and I'd get stuck. I'd have to find some motivation to get out of it. And so I would recommend planning a regular meeting, and I would have the cadence of the meeting, number one, be to review a scoreboard. You know, Tina mentioned that salespeople are competitive. Find some kind of scoreboard. Even if your sales team is 1 person, make a scoreboard. How much did they sell this month? How much did they sell compared to this same month last year? How many new proposals did they write up? How many new customers did they put into their CRM this week compared to last week? But it's really important as a leader, you have to have some kind of a scoreboard. Team members want to be held accountable because they want to win. They don't want to be set up to fail. But if they've got a game that they understand the rules and they feel like they can win, having a scoreboard is super, super, super important. And if you've got more than 1 person on your sales team, you know, just like Tina's saying, have some kind of a spiff. Even if you can't afford it financially to give them money, make the spiff be whoever adds the most jobs to the CRM this week, they get to go home at noon on Friday. Whoever follows up with the most customers in the CRM gets movie tickets this weekend. They get $25 to, you know, TGI Fridays, whatever it is. I don't know why I said TGI Fridays. I literally have never gone there before, but whatever it is, right? You know, find something for salespeople. And one thing that we did is we had, I went to the toy store and I literally bought like a WWF heavyweight title belt. It's like a kid's wrestling belt. And we said that whoever had the most sales that month gets the belt for the month. And like, there's no money attached to it. It's just, but you wouldn't believe the how people would like work extra hard. They try to close more sales, and you wouldn't believe the bragging rights that came with having this children's toy that they gotta they'd send an email out to the team with them like holding this belt, and they'd be like, I got the belt this month. That kind of stuff is really fun. And obviously it's all in goodwill, but I think that I would recommend having a regular meeting, and in your sales meetings, I would have a structured cadence to it where, you know, at part 1 of the meeting is that you check in on the scoreboard, and it's public. Everybody sees their individual performance on it. And again, if you have a really small company, Kim, I'm thinking about having just 3-4 people. I would have the scoreboard show the different responsibilities that everybody has. So maybe one part of the scoreboard is the sales, whether you want to show top line sales or whether you just want to show how many proposals that person wrote up this week. On the installation one, maybe it's how many installs are on the board that were completed on time the first time versus had to go back for a second trip. Like everyone in the department has some kind of a metric, and it needs to be public on the scoreboard so that there's accountability and everybody says, okay, this week I'm going to commit to this to make sure that we're moving the needle on this part of the scoreboard. For those of you that have more people in your sales department, I would put a couple different metrics on that where team members' performance is compared against each other, because there's a lot of equity there. So part one of the meeting is reviewing the scoreboard. Part two in the meeting, I would have it be removing roadblocks, right? Like everybody knows stuff that sucks in their job. And if a leader could get it out of the way, it would set them up to win more, right? Like I know that, Ron, if you're in a sales support role, there's all kinds of things that the team could tell you that, hey, this is a problem. If you can remove this for me, I can go sell more. So make part of it a candid discussion about just what's the stuff that we need to get out of the way, and then go to work on it. Commit to the team that you're going to do that. Part three in the meeting, if you're in a retail scenario, I would go through any monthly promotions that you have going on. So it's super important as a retailer, you should have a monthly promotion that the team understands that expires at this time and it doesn't come back, to help incentivize a sense of urgency when it comes to sales. And just review that. Hey, what's this incentive? How's it been working? Do we need to change what next month's incentive is based on what we found here? And then part four, I'd recommend live sales practice, where you actually, you're the customer, your team member's the salesperson, or vice versa. You go through a real life scenario, and afterwards you give each other feedback on what worked and didn't work. If you can get into a rhythm of that every week or every other week, you're going to find that the CRM starts to take care of itself, that team members know what's expected of them. They see the results on a scoreboard. You've carved out time for them to work on it. And this rhythm really starts to build a sense of community where they're on this journey together. So I know that, there weren't many hands raised when I asked about regular sales meetings. How tough would it be for you guys to implement a regular sales meeting where you dive into this stuff?
Well, for my store, it's just my husband and myself, and he does most of the sales, and I'm in the office. So he would basically be having a meeting with himself. I mean, we go over things, but for us, it's not really that necessary to have, because we talk all the time. So that wouldn't really work for us. We're too small.
You can still have a scorecard to keep track of ongoing projects, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would still do the spreadsheet. And my husband, he doesn't like paperwork, and he doesn't use a computer. But we do communicate regularly. I mean, we're together all the time. So in that respect, we both know what's going on, because like I said, we're small and we're always there. And, I give them reminders, and we have notes on what's going on with customers. I don't have an official spreadsheet, but I'm going to do it just for myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, in a small company like that, husband and wife, I totally get the dynamic of like a formal meeting that's strange. Like if me and my wife, like, we're gonna have a formal meeting on this, but there's a strange dynamic there. But I will say the rhythm of once a week intentionality to focus on what you're gonna do for the week is so productive. So like with me and my wife, one of the best things that we've done in our rhythm is like we try to have a weekly meeting we try to do it like at the beginning of the week of like, what do we want to meal plan for the week? Okay, Monday night, we should do this. What's our calendar look like this week? Okay, Jessica, you're doing this on this day. I've got this scheduled. Is there anything we want to get done as a family? And I mean, like, and it just takes usually 30 minutes or so, but we actually find that like the weeks that we can do that, we actually tend to have a better week. The weeks where we're just in our chaos of like, wait, what are you doing today? Oh, okay, I'm doing this. We tend to just get by as opposed to really thrive. And so one thing that I might do, you don't have to call it a formal meeting, but I think that the intentionality of some kind of a metric, if just count up how many proposals he wrote up the week before, and maybe have some kind of a metric for you of whatever it is in the office. And I would just say, to your husband, hey, we're starting out the week. I put this together and it looks like you wrote up this many proposals this week. What are we going to do this week to go out and do better? And you can tweak that based on what's right for your context, but taking 15 to 30 minutes, whether you call it a meeting or not, if it's just a husband and a wife, and focusing on what did we do last week? And based on that, what am I going to go do this week? I found that to be so profitable, both in a marriage relationship and also in a business relationship. I think the most effective week a team member could spend is planning their week out and being accountable to other people with it.
You know, I love how you mentioned that. Last year, I think I was on the road 190 nights, and I have a 10-year-old, and I'm horrible at that. I'm like the last minute, tell my husband, yep, I'm on the road for 2 or 3 days, and it definitely, I think I'll have to take work on that, what you just shared with us.
Cool. Anybody else? What do you think about a cadence of a regular sales meeting? I know that this is like pulling teeth if it hasn't been done before. There's every reason in the world why it's not possible. Yeah, John, what were you gonna say?
Well, last year we used to meet once a week, and it was just like a broad meeting that covered a lot of stuff. Like I said, we don't have a retail store; we're a service company. But last year I implemented daily meetings. Sorry, of course.
It's okay.
I implemented daily meetings. They're anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour. So we do 2 sales meetings a week, 2 production meetings, and a safety meeting every week. So it's in the schedule, so everyone knows what to expect. And it's been awesome since we've done that.
Was it tough to get buy-in at first?
Yeah, at first it was a little tough, but once people started seeing results and realized it was a meeting to reinforce like our ability to help them sell more and make more money, then we had complete buy-in. But it did take a little bit, but once results occurred, everyone bought in.
Yeah, I'm with you. So same thing for me. Like, I've had times where team members complain about, oh, we have too many meetings. And I'll tell you as a leader, like, there's days I get out of a meeting and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what am I even doing? Like, it's not worth it. I'll tell you a story. A number of months ago, this isn't a sales meeting, but I'll tell you right now, our industry, this isn't quite as true for manufacturers, but for retailers, there's like this fear of becoming too corporate. And there's kind of a pendulum that swings, right? Where you go from like one side is like the total Wild West. There's no rules. Everybody just does whatever they want. The other side is becoming like super, super, super corporate where, you know, even your bathroom breaks are planned out. And retailers tend to have a fear of becoming too corporate. And I'll just tell you that, like, you need to push more towards that structured corporate model in retail. You need to. You're not going to become too corporate. Manufacturers, maybe I don't know, maybe some are too far down and they need to ease back. But on the retailer level, you definitely need to push towards more organization. Don't worry, you're not going to become super, super corporate. So with that, there was a series of meetings that I was trying to have between our installers and our sales team. And we were running into just problems where the installers were getting mad at the salespeople. They felt like they weren't setting them up for success. And I just said, we got to start having a regular meeting. So we got into this series of meetings, and my goal was to have the installers teach the sales team. And basically I said, hey, you know, we understand that we're making some mistakes. There's some things that you want done in the field. So we're going to give you 30 minutes once a week. We're going to come in early. And I just love for you just to teach the team what you want to see. And it absolutely blew up in my face. We get like 3 weeks into this regular meeting, and I've got people, you know, screaming obscenities at each other. It's just going horrible. And I have, you know, one of the installers writes into the entire group. And I mean, this is a big company I was working at. So there's like 20 people on this email. Basically saying, hey, I'm not coming to these meetings anymore. I'm removing myself from them. So I had a choice as a leader. Do we scrap it? You know, it's dissolved into total chaos, or do we push through? And I just made the decision, well, you know, you actually don't get to decide whether you go to these meetings or not, right? Like if we're at a family dinner, you're not allowed to say, I'm not coming to family. No, not an option, right? Like if I'm the dad in this family and I'm with my wife and like we are like, our kids don't get to decide whether they come to the meal or not. Like you're coming to the freaking meal and we're going to figure out a way to make it work. So what we did is we changed the format of the meeting, and I went back to the installers and I just said, hey, obviously there's something here that's not working. What is it? Like, obviously we know there's a problem between sales and installation. How do we address this problem in a meeting? So I went to the source of it. And what we figured out is that the installers, they'd never been asked to teach anything in their lives. So for me just to say, hey, teach us what you want, that's setting them up for failure. They didn't, I mean, they knew that there were problems, but they'd never been asked to actually teach anybody anything. So what we did is we just changed the format of the meeting instead to have salespeople come in with pictures of the jobs that they were walking from the week, show them to the installers, and rather than put the burden on the installers to teach, put the burden on the salespeople to say, hey, here's what I've got. What should I do? The installers love being asked questions. They love being asked as the expert. And that transformed our meetings to where 6 weeks later, these things were humming and the installers were stoked for it. They were reaching out to salespeople in the field and creating teaching moments. But the point is that creating a series of regular meetings, no matter how small your company is one of the biggest ways to grow buy-in and equity. And I would make it a formalized meeting. And it is so important to build this in. There's going to be times where you feel like you're banging your head against a wall. But if you can stick with it, you're going to find on the back end that it buys accountability. It grows the culture of your company.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
It's John Lester, and I'm with Joel with Hearth and Home Technologies, and I couldn't agree more with having the regular meetings. We do it on a national level and a regional level, and I get frustrated that my dealers don't do it, right? And I see the breakdown of communication, or I'm talking to the owners and then I'm talking to the salespeople, and sometimes I feel like I'm a counselor trying to bridge fences. But the key thing about the structured meetings is they end up becoming a two-way street, right? Where the one side gets to talk to the other side, and they get the sense that they're being listened to. Then they have a part or buy-in to what the resolutions are, and being able to make the improvements. One thing I think that's important is to make sure that everyone understands what the purpose of the meeting is. It's for us to share best practice, be collaborative, and what the objective of the meeting is. And it takes a little while. We all don't want to get meetinged out, but the rewards and the benefits are phenomenal when you start getting it. And we like having regular meetings, right? I like to know what my schedule is. I can prepare for it. I know what's happening. And you just get into the routine, and you end up starting to look forward to them because you know you're going to get value out of it.
John, you're absolutely right. I love that you talked about purpose and agenda. So purpose, again, that's setting expectations, right? The reason that we're having this meeting is because that's you setting expectations. As a leader, like, I swear, what I'm finding in my life is everything comes down to setting expectations. So often when I run into a problem, I got to point the finger at myself. Did I set the expectation? If I didn't set the expectation for the team member, why on earth am I why am I mad at them when they're failing? I didn't set the expectation of what I wanted to begin with. So it's my fault. Now, if I've set the expectation and they fail to meet it, now we have a conversation and we point to the expectation. This is what we talked about. This is the expectation that was set. I'm seeing your behavior didn't line up with it. Can you fill this gap in for me and let me know what's going on? Now it's either a coaching discussion or a disciplinary discussion, right? But without expectations, everything fails. So I love that you said that, John. Always give the purpose of the meeting. The reason that we're here today, right? Like, what did we do at the beginning of this call? The reason that we're here today on the call is we had this series of webinars where we talked through building a digital sales pipeline. We talked through building a CRM system. Today, we're going to dive into implementing this in your business specifically, right? That's setting an expectation for the purpose of the call. So good that you said that. The agenda, number 2, is really important. An agenda is like a framework, right? Kind of like if you give the team a CRM and you say, hey, here's the purpose of the CRM, and we expect that on Tuesdays and Thursdays you'll get 1 hour to work on that. That's like giving a meeting agenda. You're saying in the meeting, first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. The team member, now they understand what's expected of them, and they have an idea of when things are going to occur. So yeah, and I'll circle up on this too. I'm making a list of what I'm going to send out to the group. So I'm going to send out the script for chat. I'm also going to send out of an agenda for regular sales meetings, and you can modify this as you want, but I would absolutely go into a meeting with a set agenda, and you could put that up for everybody. This is the reason that we're here. These are the 4 things that we're going to go through today, and then just go through ABC, so that way there's expectations and people understand what's going to help. I'd also try to make it fun. For retailers that aren't in a regular rhythm of meetings, don't worry about getting meetinged out. I would guess that your team is not used to going to meetings at all. So I would just start with a regular cadence of meetings, and after a year, then you can decide if you have too many and you can start to scale back. But I would guarantee now for just about any retailer, the problem is not too many meetings, the problem is too little meetings. And so make it fun. Buy donuts, right? Like, if you don't have a ton of employees, if you have, I've heard on this call anywhere from 4 to 12 team members, buy a dozen donuts and get coffee. It's going to cost you $15 or $20. And I mean, I know for me, like, dude, if someone buys me donuts in the morning, like, I'm stoked on that. Like, I'll come into the office and eat donuts and listen to the cadence of the meeting. So make it fun, make that investment with your team and make it regular. And that, I know that we've gone pretty far from the CRM, but to bring it back to the CRM, if you tell the team, hey, even twice a week, I'm going to buy you donuts and give you an hour to work on your CRM with the rest of your team members. We're going to knock it out together. That's something that works really, really well. Anything else in the CRM before we move on? There's one last thing that I want to hit before we get going here. Anything on this CRM? Okay. This is the last thing I want to talk about today is the weekly game plan. I think if there's anything that you can take away from today, I think that the weekly game plan is probably the most important. So the digital sales pipeline, we talked through the chat script. We know that there's equity there. And I think that giving a team member the chat script so they can copy and paste responses, that's going to help set them up to get buy-in. The CRM is going to take a cadence of accountability to get that going. But where I think the most equity that anybody can find in their company right now in the COVID crisis, develop a weekly game plan for your team members. I think everybody in every company needs to have a weekly game plan. And it goes back to Zig Ziglar, right? If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. Whether you're an installer, whether you're a salesperson, whether you're in the office, whether you're the janitor, everybody should have a weekly game plan where you identify, this is what my week looks like. This is what I'm going after. And at the end of the week, I'll know if I succeeded or failed, right? If I'm the janitor for the company, I got to identify how many toilets am I going to scrub this week, right? We got 50 toilets in the school. My goal is to scrub all 50. I'm going to check the box that I did every single one of them. And at the end of the week, that tells me if the week was effective or not, right? It doesn't matter what your role is, but every single person in the company should have a weekly game plan that they can look at the beginning of the week to identify their opportunities, and they can turn into a supervisor at the end of the week. And this is not about cracking the whip. This is not about demeaning anybody, but this is about winning. I would guess that a lot of your team members are winning and they don't even know it. And what I found working for different companies over the years is I can't even tell you how frustrating it was to be working hard day in and day out and never be recognized for it. So to have a weekly game plan where you're actually going out to attack the week, you turn it into a supervisor and the supervisor goes, Tim, nice job, man. You crushed this week. I can't believe that you were so effective. I can't wait to see what you do next week. That inspires team members. So the weekly game plan that we talked about last week was in the sales function. And that's where we're going to start this conversation out. But we can open it up to other departments like service and installation. I would guess that in most companies, there's probably not a weekly game plan. How do you think that could change the buy-in of your team? And where do you think there's going to be resistance in getting something like that started?
I think including them and helping develop the weekly game plan, make sure that the expectations are in line with what their current workload is, and push and extend as needed. But I think that's an important part of getting buy-in from your members, whoever's working there. But I again agree 100% on the weekly game plan. It reduces anxiety with people. They know what the expectations are. Even with this pandemic, HHT's come back to us and has told us what our game plan is. Okay, it's different. I'm not on the road. I haven't been on the road since March 20th. All right, I'm missing the New York State Thruway, and I can't believe I can say that. But I know what's expected of me, while I'm working at home and what they want to accomplish. So that reduces a lot of anxiety on my end in this new working order. So, having a game plan and knowing what it is and then having members be part of it gets a lot more buy-in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm going to share. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know what Joel's doing, but I mean, the others in the group know.
I'm taking my daily naps. Come on, trying to catch up. Without a weekly plan, there's no measurement, there's no accountability, there's no way to know whether you're reaching your goals or not. So you've got to start with a game plan to find out whether you're successful or not.
Yeah, I'm going to share a different screen here real quick. I'm going to share the weekly game plan that we use. Can you guys all see that?
Hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna minimize the chat and some other things so I can kind of go through this and show it to you. So this is what we do. And again, this is an Excel document. You can do whatever you want with this, but what we do is we divide up our week like this. So the team member puts in their name, they put in the day of the week, and I guess I'll back up. With a weekly game plan, my advice is to physically print this out. I have a digital version in case I need to modify it, but I would physically print this out, and team members keep it with them 24 hours a day, not 24 hours a day, but whenever they're at the store. First off, weekly big three. Think about your week. What are the 3 things I've got to get done this week? No matter who you are, everyone's got 3 things they got to get done this week, but document it. You know, it just, that prioritizes things, right? If I'm looking at my week, the problem for me is that, like, I'm getting so many emails and so many text messages all the time, but I'm just gonna give you the example for my week, right? So like, right now I'm doing 4 to 5 webinars a week. And so I've got to be on point for those. I've got to have them planned out. And if I just instantly respond to every email right when it comes in, as opposed to planning out these webinars, like, they're not going to go smoothly and people won't get value out of it. Like, you know, for me, like, intentionally make time to plan my webinars. That's one of my big 3 every single week, right? There's other things I have to do. One of them would be to have a clean inbox. So maybe another part of the big 3 would be spend 2 hours, 3 days a week on my inbox, right? So I'm not responding in time to everything, but what I'm doing is I'm batching it. I'm saying this is important to get back to people that are responding to me, but I'm going to batch this time frame to do it. That could be on my weekly big 3. Another part of my weekly big 3 would have to do with, you know, reaching out to clients. Looks like Ron has to take off. Ron, great to see you. Thanks for being here. But it could be get back to this client on the issue that they're having. But everybody's got a big 3, and it's super intense at the beginning of the week. Like, plan that out. It's really important to be intentional with just like, what are the big 3 things I have to get done? Now, going through this on the sales end, this is super important, right? You see these 10 opportunities right here that are listed out. I've got them highlighted. This is thinking through your sales funnel. So everybody's got a sales funnel. Moving customers from a proposal to a site visit. I want to go through my CRM and find 10 customers, find their name, the product that they looked at, and the dollar value for the product. Now, again, you can modify this. If you don't have the CRM in front of you, maybe you've got the customer's name, the product they looked at, and their phone number. You know, you can change this however you want, but what's the opportunity? And this is a customer that I want to move from just getting a written estimate into scheduling someone to come out. And if you've got a team member that, you know, maybe they're in the field all the time, that they can't follow up on this, give this to someone in the office, right? Like, and say, hey, I've got 10 customers here. Here's their contact information. They haven't scheduled an in-home visit yet, and we're trying to move them to that. So you can give this to someone in the office. They can just call them up. Hey, I know you got an estimate written up last week. We'd love to come out to your house to take a look at that and finalize the numbers. Or in the COVID crisis, we'd love to schedule a video call to walk through all the particulars of the job, and we can just make sure this is going to work for you. Is there a good day to do that? So you've got 10 customers that you're going to do that with. The next one here is customers that you've completed the in-home visit, and all that's left is collecting the money, right? Document that and call those people back. Hey, I know that we were out at your house last week. You were looking at getting a couple other bids. I just wanted to check in on how those bids looked and see if you wanted to get onto our schedule. The intentionality of breaking down your sales funnel, where you know, here's 10 customers that I want to move from a proposal into an in-home visit. Here's 10 customers that I want to move from an in-home visit into a deposit. That will give you power like you've never seen. I mean, you will be so productive and you will make so many more sales by just developing every week. I've got this system and this rhythm of follow-up in your weekly game plan. Okay, so down here.
Just the visual of the form is huge, because you might have a file on every customer, but unless you actually see it in front of you in a visual like this, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Joel. So down here for retailers, these are in-home visits that we're going to this week. So, or, you know, for right now, the COVID crisis, virtual consultations, right? I've got these 3 virtual consultations scheduled for this week. If you're a sales rep, these are 4 dealers that I'm going to talk to this week in person. What we want to do is we want to know the customer's name, the product that they're looking at, and AFTM. Do you guys remember what that stands for? AFTM? Ask for the money. Can I check the box that I asked for the money? So if you're a retailer and you've got, say, 3 or 4 in-home visits this week, you want to know, okay, you want to document this at the beginning of the week. Who am I going out to see? You know, Sally Jones. What product is she looking at? She's looking at this brand of wood stoves. After I've gone out to her house, can I check the box that I asked for the money at the house? Super, super important that we do that, because what I found personally is that most of the time salespeople don't. When we started tracking this, we realized that less than 20% of the customers we were going after their house, less than 20%, we actually asked for the money in the house. But that was the time when the customer was motivated. That was the time when they actually wanted to make a purchase. And we weren't even allowing them the opportunity to do that. Instead, we were going back to the office. We were crunching the numbers. We were calling back later after momentum had been derailed. So this metric is super important on the weekly game plan. Okay, the last couple things. Find 5 customers every week that you're gonna go back to call and check in with, to say thank you to see how they're doing. Or maybe you send a $5 Starbucks card, you send them a thank you note, whatever it is. Next on this is going to be target accounts. Who are 10 accounts that are not currently doing business with you that you want to start doing business with? Remodelers, builders, architects, right? What's their name? What's the action that that team member is going to take this week? So one of the things that I absolutely love is at the end of the week, seeing one of these game plans turned into me that's like, it's totally marked up. It's got spilled coffee on it. It's got 3 different colors of highlighters. This is a really basic system of organization that will make your team immensely more productive. Giving them an hour at the beginning of the week to fill this out is so important. You know, even at the end of the week, if they didn't complete the whole thing, this gives you a way for them to turn it in. And if you're a tiny company, they get to look at it themselves and just be honest on, hey, at the end of the week, here's what I did. I guess the week wasn't that productive. I didn't get any of this stuff done. Just be honest with that. With me, one of the most productive rhythms that I have in my life is being able to look at my week at the end of it, and being able to look at the week at the end of it and knowing, did I win or lose? And I feel really good on the weeks that I win. On the weeks where I lose, I just say, hey, okay, yeah, I got distracted that week. It's okay. I was focused on, at least I've got the focus to understand that. And now this week I can game plan for what's going to make it better. Joel's asking if I can send this template out, and I absolutely will. I absolutely will. And let me just make a note of that here. I'll send that out. But again, the magic is not, if you just give this to your team and say, good luck, they're going to fail. They're going to hate it. They're going to think it's extra paperwork. You're going to have to take 3 to 4 months. Liz asked for the CRM template. You bet. I'll send out the CRM template too. You're going to have to take 3 to 4 months and build this, you know, with regular meetings. You're going to have to say, hey guys, you know, here's the weekly game plan. We want to set you up to win. And this is the way that we're going to do it. And so I'm going to give you an extra hour on Monday mornings. I'm going to buy you coffee. I'm going to get you donuts. I'm going to be here with you to help you plan your week. You're going to have to do that for 3 to 4 months. But I'm telling you, I've seen the fruit of it firsthand. You know, I've got a team member that I keep saying I have. About a month ago, I left my job. So I'm in this full time now, helping businesses. But, you know, for the last 7 years as I've been in retail stores, I've had team members that say they couldn't live without this. It takes some time to develop it, but they look at it and say, this is the way that I make money. Like, this is the way that I actually focus my weeks and help customers. And if you took this game plan away from me, I'd be a mess. So there is light at the end of the tunnel with that. We've talked about a lot today, and I know that these are new concepts. I want to open it up. Has this been effective in giving you guys some direction in how to prioritize and actually get this stuff implemented?
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
What's going to be one change based on today? What's going to be one change? I'm gonna call on every single person here. I'm gonna round table the group. Okay, so get ready to talk. But what's going to be one change that you make that you're now gonna go forward with based on this? We're gonna start with Brandon. What's gonna be one change, Brandon?
Now I have an organized system to, you know, contact everybody that I need to contact. And I think one thing that we were lacking is that thank you follow-up. So that's for sure that I'm going to be implementing in my contacts.
Cool. I love it. So good, Brandon. Kim, let's go to you. What's going to be one thing that you're going to take away from today and put to work?
Well, I'm gonna definitely do the spreadsheet thing for the follow-ups because I think it'll be handier for my husband. So I hope you're gonna send us those templates because that'll save us some time creating
Yes.
our own. Yours are really good.
Yeah, I absolutely will. I'm taking notes on this, guys. I've got your email addresses. You might get an email from me in a month and ask how this is going. So you're incriminating yourself here. Joel, how about you?
Well, I already implemented the chat on my website and got a hit on it the very first day that I did that. So that was an awesome tool. This template, I think, will be very helpful for a lot of my dealers. I'm going to share that with them just to give some focus on what they need to do during the week. And even if they feel like they failed, if they got one thing done, they were successful. So I think it's a great
Awesome.
tool.
Cool. Karen, do you want to take a shot at this? Does this make a difference with what you do as an affiliate manager?
I forgot to unmute. I apologize. I have a weekly game plan, of course, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that gets blown to hell, but I like this more organized. I can't use yours,
Yeah.
but I like this idea, and I think I'm going to create something more comprehensive or something with more detail, more requirements of me on the spreadsheet, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay, let's go to Doug.
I like the weekly game plan, but more importantly, the top three. And,
Top three. Yep.
like Karen mentioned, yeah, those weeks can blow up quick, but you can still focus on those top three and say, you know what, if everything else goes to hell, I still want to get these three things must get done.
Yeah. Yep. That's really good. Okay, Liz.
So you'll be pleased to know that I have created a to-do list that is double-sided from your talk today. But I think the thing that I'm going to do first is to get into Talk To. We've been doing the chat for a couple weeks now and got a ton of activity on it already. So that has obviously already been worth investing some more time in. But you can actually set up pre-populated questions in Talk To so that when someone chats you, you can type in, I think, like a / and it'll give you the list of all your pre-populated questions. And so you can just click it and then it enters it as if you had typed it into the chat. So it saves a ton of time and then you never have to worry about being forgetful for asking a question. You can put all those questions in there. And I also want to create a tracking system too, because what's also wonderful about Talk To is they have a monitoring page where you can actually see where someone is on your website. And so I kind of want to keep track of that and find out where my most hit pages are and kind of use that as information for answering those two big questions that the customers have of, how can we help them figure out what's going to work, and including information as well. So I'm going to be busy today. Thank you.
Wow, no kidding. You're going to be busy. That's awesome. And I didn't see, and this is where I didn't even realize that with Talk To. So Liz, what I would love, if you want to, man, could you make a couple screenshots and show people how to do that? Like, that's a great feature. If you want to send that to me, I'll send that out to the group here once I have it. Okay, let's go to John.
I'm going to be adding to my standard work, checking with my dealers on do they have a CRM system, none, or what they're using, and get a little bit better understanding as to what they're doing so I can start helping them move the needle in that direction. And also do some analysis on, how are my dealers that have CRM systems doing compared to my dealers that don't? Is there, I can go back in and go, hey, my dealers that have a CRM system, they're up 15%. Those that aren't, they're not doing as well. So, kind of give them some data to help move in that direction. And the other is to start saying which ones are doing weekly meetings and which ones are, and start talking a little bit more about the value in those. So I'm going to add that to my standard work.
That's awesome, man. I love that about checking in with dealers. And I'll just say this, for people that are sales reps on this, and actually, anyone on here that sells B2B, so if you sell to a business, whether it's a contractor, an architect, a landscaper, if you can come in and give that business tools to succeed, they will start buying more from you. There's no question. If you've got a builder and you just, and you just get to know them and you're checking in on your account and you say, hey, that's amazing. How do you go out and get new opportunities? Have you thought about, building a system of having you or your office manager check in on those on a regular basis? Man, like, take my weekly game plan, rip it off, give it to your builder. Like, that will do so much to make you the expert in their eyes, and they will start to come to you with questions about how to grow their business. For you guys that are sales reps to be able to give your dealers ideas of running weekly meetings and having templates of spreadsheets, it's going to make a big difference. Ian's saying that he's got to go. Ian, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. As a sales rep, to give value to businesses, it will absolutely increase what they do with you. Okay, I know that our time's up. I want to hit 3 people real quick. Tina, what's going to be one thing that you do as a result of today?
Well, I'll give you 2, one personal and then one professional. So definitely, I've always talked about having those meetings with my husband. Thank God he's a little bit easygoing when it comes to that, but I think life at home is good. So I'm going to try to do that 15 to 20 minutes really quick, what my schedule is versus like the night before, hey, I got to go and leave for 2 or 3 days. So I'm going to start working on that. And the next one is during this time, we have been instructed to audit dealer websites just to make sure that the right Napoleon logo is on there and the right content is. So what I thought would be nice, because I think that chat feature is fantastic, is to add that in my audit and then be able to talk to the dealers about that.
Amazing. That's really, really good. And that's funny you bring up auditing websites. So I got asked by Napoleon to present in a few weeks on their big webinar that they're doing, and we are going to dive deep into website best practices. And I think I would invest in building a framework for a dealer's website. So like, I literally have one right here that I was working on, like a wireframe for how a website should be laid out to connect with customers and get results. I would, as you're scouring those websites, come up with a best practice. And I would recommend making a wireframe. I'm not going to share this now. I'm going to tease this out. I think the Napoleon webinars are all free. So everybody needs to reach out to someone at Napoleon to get access to this. But in this webinar that I'm doing, I'm going to show best practices and I'm going to give away this wireframe and say, this is how your website needs to be laid out. You need a call to action here. This is where you need to talk about product. This is where you don't. But as a rep, if you're exploring websites, you don't need my list. You can come up with one. And if you can make a wireframe for a website that you can give to your dealers, it'll be so effective. Same thing if you guys have a builder. Most builders have crappy websites. If you've had some success with your website and you can just create a wireframe and say to your builder, hey, I'd love to give this to you. Whoever does your website, just give this to them and tell them to make your website look like this. You will get so much equity out of it. So I love that you said that, Tina. That's amazing. Okay, let's go to John. John, is there one thing that you're going to take away from this that you're going to put to use?
Yeah, I absolutely love the weekly game plan. Some stuff I want to tweak, but
Totally.
I love that for a couple of reasons. But one is just having a beat on what my guys are doing. Thought I was really good at that, but when I had to temporarily bench 3 of my office staff and took over their jobs, I realized I had no idea what they were working on. I was getting calls from people like, hey, where's this thing? And if you don't know where to look, you don't have the data. So this is a great way, like, to have a dashboard almost every week of what everyone's doing and what you're doing. So I love this. It's awesome.
Cool. Awesome, man. That's so good. And that's the heart behind it. And like, as I'm talking here, I hope this is not coming across as like guilting or shaming anybody. Like that's not what I'm trying to do. But I am trying to give a reminder that like there are some things that have kind of gotten loose in a lot of businesses, and we just got to be honest with that. And I was talking to a friend, has a very successful business in Seattle, and he gave me the analogy. It's like, Tim, we were driving a sports car at 80 miles an hour on cruise control, and that's the way it had been. And all of a sudden now the car's in the shop, and even though that sucks, we're actually looking under the hood and we're seeing, man, there was some stuff that was misfiring. And this is the time to go to work on it. And so I think that that's the example for all of our businesses, is that if we're being honest, like the last 8 years have allowed us to get away with a lot of bad practices. And there's a lot of businesses that were selling well in spite of not doing things right. And it's like the saying, when the tide comes in, you find out who is skinny dipping. And that's the way that it's going to be for the next little bit. But the beauty of that is that we can start to go to work on our businesses. We can fine tune these practices right now to make money during the crisis, but especially on the back end of this thing, man, we can come out swinging. So I want to thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. It's amazing that National Chimneys sponsored these. It's extremely generous. And Karen, you're the workhorse behind all this. For those of you that have not interacted with Karen much, she is just a workhorse. I mean, it's a thankless job running an affiliate. So I appreciate you putting this on for your dealers, and the work that you do with Joel to keep this thing going is amazing. So I want to thank you guys for being here. You all by now should have my contact information, but I will be sending this out to the group. I will get the email addresses of everybody that was on this call, and we will follow up with you with some things to go to work on. So I want to thank you guys.